I'd like to show how I'm going to modify the engine mount to use the Kevlar cord. I cut a piece of Kevlar cord. It's 5 feet long. By the time I put this through the body, tie a loop on one end, tie a loop on the other end, it'll be about a foot shorter. The engine mount's fairly small, and we've got these 2 rings. I have put a fillet on the top and the bottom, on the top only, but not the bottom of the forward ring, and I did on the top and the bottom of the aft ring. So this ring does have glue fillets on both sides. This has a fillet only on the front side. The reason is this side I'm going to use the E6000 glue on this, and I'm going to put the Kevlar cord on here. Now, one thing I have done is I've cut a slot in here for the Kevlar cord. So I'm going to make a loop around this and pull the Kevlar cord through here, then add some of the E6000 glue around the edge. That's what I'm going to do, and I'll do that in just a moment, but I just wanted to show the details of what I'm planning on doing. Now, there are other videos that show different types of ways of attaching this. Some show tying a double overhand knot. Unfortunately, that knot will get tight, but it may not tighten against the tube. It's also a fairly large knot. Another knot is to use a fisherman's loop and then pull the string through, in which case you get a slip knot with a large loop. Again, that's going to have like 2 loops on one, or 2 strands on one side, one on the other. It's going to be fairly loose. Some of these, they will work, but they're not very practical. So all I want to do is just find a better way to do all of this. I'm going to do it with what I introduced in one of my previous videos, which is to use a slip knot. So a slip knot around here will hold quite tightly, and then I'm going to put it through this little notch, and make sure there's plenty of glue on this, because the stress is going to be on this notch, and it's going to have to transfer that stress onto the cord, which is going to be tied around the actual engine itself. So let me go ahead and do that. But that's the intent with this particular cord. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to comment that I use E6000 glue for this, and I've commented on this in other videos, but I'm going to comment again on this video why I use it. E6000 is similar to, in strength and chemistry, to an epoxy. An epoxy has a resin plus a hardener. This has a resin plus a solvent. Namely, it's dissolved together. And when the solvent evaporates, it leaves behind the resin. Importantly, the resin contains what are called monomer molecules, which combine to make the polymers, which makes the incredibly long molecules, which gives us incredible strength. This is similar to what an epoxy does, but an epoxy creates the reaction by having a hardening agent. This glue requires evaporation. It requires the solvent to evaporate for the glue to tighten up, and the reaction takes place. To use this glue, to be sure, the instructions do say that it will dry fairly soon. Like I can dry this in like 4 or 5 minutes with a heat lamp. Within an hour, it's very firm. However, the polymerization reaction that gives the type of strength is necessary. It takes about 1 day. So if you use this glue, keep in mind it's somewhat pliable, maybe a little bit spongy for the first hour or 2. Then it's rather firm. But even though it's firm, it has not completed its chemical reaction. So be sure to let this glue react for at least 1 day before you use it. I like using this because I don't have to mix an epoxy, but yet I get the same strength as an epoxy. We'll also see that this is very, very useful for other areas of the engine mount. Okay, so given that little speech, I'm going to go ahead and put the Kevlar cord onto this engine mount. I'm going to start out by making a slip knot, and I've done this before in other videos. And you can see just a simple loop, and I'm going to tie a simple knot here. And I'll show you this. So all I've done was to create a knot and tie it around the Kevlar. The reason I like this knot, and we're going to see this in a moment, one reason is I can take this knot here and I can adjust the pigtail length to make it any length I want. So I'm going to make this fairly short so it fits inside the engine mount. So I make it very, very short. Now I can pull this extremely tight, as tight as I want. So make it very, very, very tight, but yet the knot will still slide. Kevlar is very slippery. Even though the knot is extremely tight, the knot still slides. The other reason we can see right now is that the pigtail is right along the edge of the actual cord. So the knot that's going to be against the body tube is nice and flat. So it'll be nice and flat. It'll stick against it, a nice square mount. A very, very tight mount that we've got. So let's go ahead and put this on the body tube. So all we do is just loop it around there, and then we'll just pull it tight. Oh, by the way, I like putting the notch opposite the side of where the engine clip is. It's a little bit more for convenience, but also there could be more stress in this area. so I put the cord over on this side. No real evidence to show that makes a difference, but that's just the way I like doing things. Okay, so you can see the knot is on there. So we just slide this down, and we pull this tight again, tight as we want it, and pull this through at this point. You see the little pigtail then just lies down right there. So this knot is almost as big as the ring, and that's okay. We're just going to cover the whole thing with glue, and then we're going to have this pulled tight down here, and this will then slide very easily into the body tube. So I'm going to do this in 2 steps. I'm going to go ahead and glue this and let this dry. I'm just going to push that down. And then after I let this dry, I'm going to go ahead and insert this into the body tube. Inserting into the body tube is a little bit trickier because installing an engine mount when there's a large cord hanging off of it can be a bit tricky. And if you're not careful, you can glue, I'm getting glue all over my hands. You can glue, besides gluing your hands, you might accidentally glue your shock cord inside of your body tube. So we just have to be a little bit more careful when we do this. Okay, so I like using this rod here. I've used it in other videos. Some people have commented that, well, you don't really need to use that rod if you use the nozzle. Well, the nozzle I'm sure will work, but since I use this glue all the time, I would be constantly cleaning the nozzle. I find that I'm very, very talented now at using this glue rod. All I do is just keep on rolling it around. I can very easily control the glue. I've done this so many times. It's like working with a hobby knife. After a while, you learn to use the hobby knife as an extension of your hand, and same thing with this glue rod. So I just put the glue on the engine tube, and I'm just smearing it onto the Kevlar cord. And be careful because you see it's kind of a stringy glue. That's okay. It's a really nice glue. I like the way that it's really sticky, and we'll see in a moment how that really is a benefit to doing the engine mount. So I'll go ahead and smear the glue around the engine tube, smear it around the Kevlar cord, and this cord has a knot on the end. Be sure to keep the glue down below the edge of the engine mount. That's fairly easy to do. We've got plenty of space to play with. You can see now the cord is impregnated inside of this glue. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on a heater. You might be asking, what in the world am I doing with what is the heater? I took a lamp. The lamp had an incandescent bulb in it, and it was very nice to heat things. However, the bulb burned out, of course, as the incandescent bulbs do. So now I have a little personal space heater underneath the lamp, and the lampshade makes a perfect prop such that I can place different rocket parts on it and let them dry. Maybe later I'll show a picture of that. But the personal heater is on the bottom blowing upward, and by doing so it provides a little bit of heat. The heat will enhance the chemical reaction of the glue and just make that chemical reaction happen a little bit faster. Just going to push this down a little bit more onto the ring, just to make sure that we get a nice solid connection. And okay, that looks good now. So again, depending on how you want to work with this, whether you want to use a nozzle or I use this wire for a lot of things, and again, I'm quite good at doing this. One nice thing about this glue is it stays put. It stays where you put it. So I put it around here, and there's quite a bit. And I'm just going to set this on my drying rack, dryer, heater, whatever I want to call it. Again, it's one of the small little personal heaters, about the size of a very small shoebox. And it blows air. I have it on the ground pointing upward. It makes a nice column of air going up that's somewhat warm. And it will keep this warm. It's not going to make it hot. I don't want it hot. I just want to make it warm. The chemical reaction happens faster. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let this dry for an hour. It'll be very, very dry, but keep in mind the actual hardening will take about a day. So I can't fly this for a day. I have to let this harden. That's okay. I still have to put the rest of the rocket together, paint it. That's going to take a day. So that's going to be fine as far as this glue. So again, it's an industrial polymer glue. Polymers are very similar to epoxies. This will have incredible strength if you use it exactly the way that it talks about. So now that this is, you can see this is starting to set. It's starting to actually get shiny, which means it's contracting a little bit. It's pulling together. It's smoothing out. It's looking very, very nice. So I'm going to go ahead and put this cord and engine mount on this little dryer. Let it sit there for about an hour. And again, the very, very light heat will just make this solidify extremely fast. Oh, by the way, that's the way that I do my fins as well. I talked about a way to do fins using a touch of cyanoacrylate glue, the CA glue, with the wood glue. You put them together on the fin, you stick your fin on, hold it for 10 seconds, and it will stay in place. I put that on the dryer, and in 20 minutes, the fins are dry. And then I add the fillets. Another 20 minutes later, the fillets are dry. So again, it's a very, very fast way to dry glue. And it's not intensely hot, but it's warm enough so that the glues will dry a lot faster. Okay, so I'm going to put this on there and let this dry. And when I come back, I'm going to put this inside the engine tube. And you can see it's a little bit more challenging because if you put glue in here and then stick this in, this cord is going to get covered with glue. Not only will it get covered with glue, but you may not get the glue off of it, or the glue might stick it to the inside of the tube. So we have to be a little bit more careful how we're going to do that. And as you expect, I'm going to use E6000 for mounting this inside the tube, at least for this forward ring, because of its incredible strength. The other important thing about this glue is it doesn't have that grabbing effect. When you're inserting the engine mount, they sometimes say insert quickly with a steady, fast motion. And if you use a wood glues will at some point sometimes grab, and which means they'll dry very suddenly. And that happens when you get a very, very thin coating. It just dries, and then your engine mount might be stuck halfway in the rocket, and then you throw away the rocket. I've never had that happen, but I have had a few of them get very, very tight, and I had to put a lot of force on the rocket in order to finish putting the engine mount in. So we'll talk about this in the next video, but for now, you see we've got this nice long cord, 5-foot cord, and it's going to look very, very nice when we get it up high in the sky. And we have to make sure this is very well anchored onto the engine mount. Okay, that's it. Well, next one we'll mount it inside the body tube.